Okay, let's continue styling now. We want to apply kind of a dark blue color to all the text in this website. So we might as well do that under the body property, obviously the body element in CSS. So let's go there. In style.css, inside of body, I want to go ahead and type color. So the color property, and then this is the color pound 32666F semicolon, save and refresh the page. So it's this blue that will apply everywhere. Now if there is a certain situation where we want a different color than the blue, then we can give that element an ID and specify a different color, such as red or whatever the color of the font is going to be. Let's continue styling now. So back to CSS. We worked under common. Now we're going to create a new section called about, and we will start styling the sections. So section pound intro on the about page. We want to give some padding right here at the very top. So padding 0 from the top, 3% from the right, 1% from the bottom, and 3% so that it's aligned with everything on top, with the image and with the navigation, so that about and this lorem ipsum are aligned. Okay, 3% from the left. We also want to create a border bottom, 0.1 em, dashed and white. Okay, let's see how this looks now. So this is what we have. We have our first section, the intro section, aligned with everything else at the top, and we created a very nice white delicate border that is dashed and right under that about section. Now the H1, so section pound intro space H1, font size 3 em. Refresh the page. So this is going to be a big font, so it's like an intro section. We want it to look nice and big and dominant when we first land on the page. Next, the P, so section pound intro space P, font size 2.5 em. Okay, let's save, and again, so this is the intro. Okay, perhaps eventually when you build your own website you don't have this much text here. It depends on what you're doing, but it's nice to land on an about page and then have an intro section that explains what this page is about, and then underneath that section to have even more sections which we will style inside of columns. So we will have 4 columns for the widescreen. Now talking about widescreen, what we want to do here is basically right under the about section we want to create 4 columns, and each column includes one of those types of skills and services, professional history, education, and awards. We saw this earlier when we first started building the website. So that layout is going to apply to wide screens. When the screen is not wide, when the screen is narrow, we're going to have a stacked layout. We don't want to have a layout of 4 columns next to one another, because that will look minute. We will stack those 4 different sections on top of each other. Okay, so we're at a point where we have to make this distinction between our wide screens and our narrow screens. So let's go to CSS, and what we're going to do is use the @media syntax, which is a CSS3 syntax, and let's go ahead and start. So right before everything, at the very top, I'm going to type @media space screen and space, open close parentheses, and inside of the parentheses type max width colon 980 pixels, and then open close curly braces, and whatever we need we will place here. Okay, let's type the next syntax and then we'll explain what this is. In fact, we can copy this and paste it, and we can just make changes here. Here it should be min width 981 pixels. Okay, let's explain what this means. The first one is saying if the screen has a maximum width of 980 pixels, which means if the screen is 980 pixels or less, then implement whatever is between these two curly braces. The second line is saying if the screen is at least 981 pixels or more, that's why we say minimum width 981 pixels, which means or more, then implement whatever is between these curly braces. So when we design the layout for the wide screens, we're going to insert all our properties between these two curly braces. When we design the stacked layout for the narrow screens, we're going to place all the properties between these two curly braces. Now, the way I chose the values 980 and 981 pixels is just by looking at my design as a designer. So, as a designer, I would look at the screen and I use my judgment and decide when is a good point to make that cut. So, right now I like the layout. Obviously, I haven't designed the 4-column layout yet. We will do that in a minute. But that 4-column layout right under this intro section is going to look nice on a wide screen. But when I scale down my window at a point like this, which is around 980 pixels, I don't think that having 4 columns next to one another is going to look nice anymore. So at that point, we will change it to a stacked layout. And that point, something around this wide of a screen, is 980 pixels. And so that's how I got those values. So let's go ahead and implement now. So we want to style for the wide screen, and that's why we will start filling inside of those two curly braces. Remember, the minimum width 981 pixels, which means 981 pixels and more. Section dot skills, open close curly braces. These 4 sections have the class skills because we want them to have the same behavior. We want them to have the same width of 15%. We want them to float left because we want them to be next to one another. We want them to have a padding of 0.5% from the top, 6% from the right, 3% from the bottom, and 3% from the left. We also want them to have a line height. Their text, their paragraph should have a line height of 2 em, and we want a border left 0.1 em dashed and white. So let's refresh the page, but before doing so I want to save my style sheet. If you see a black diamond next to style.css, it means it hasn't been saved yet after the changes we made. So I'm going to save and I'll go and refresh the page, and this is the change. So these are our 4 columns. It looks nice, very nicely organized, and so forth. Now, a very important thing we want to do is we want to indicate which page we're on. So currently we're on the about.html page, and obviously this title is indicating that, but it's also nice to have an indicator in the navigation. So something should change in the navigation that says you are on the About page, you are on the Portfolio page, and so on. To do that, I want to go to about.html and look at my A element. Okay? So I want to indicate that I am on the About page. Currently, the A element has already an attribute href. I want to give it another attribute ID, and I will choose a value such as selected. That makes sense to me. I will save this and then go to Style, and logically we would place this under About, but what we're going to do is later on when we want to put an indicator for the portfolio page or the contact page, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the A element of the portfolio page and put the ID selected, go to the A element of the contact page and put an ID selected. So that's why I don't want to put the property of A pound selected under the About section, because it's actually for the other pages as well. So I will place it under Common. Okay? Syntactically, nothing's going to go wrong wherever you place it, but to have a nice, clean, organized work, I'd rather do it this way. So A pound selected, so the A element whose ID is selected, I want to color that turquoise blue, which is 33C9E4, and I want to give it an underline. So text decoration underline. Okay, so now what happens is when I refresh the about.html page, since the A element of the about word has an ID selected, it should follow the properties that we just added here, which are the turquoise color and the underline. So let's go to about.html, refresh the page. We haven't saved, it seems. Let's save and refresh the page. And indeed that's the case. So the turquoise color and the underline play the role of the visual indicator to the user that the user is on the About page.